Happy New Year, y'all! Woo! Okay, I need your help. We're going to kick this off. I forgot to do this in first service. You're going to help me pull it off. Last line of happy birthday. Are you ready? With me. Here we go. Happy birthday to... Turn to your neighbor and say, you. First time I've ever sang on this mic, all right? Today, we celebrate, we just completed our second year of movement, all right? Yeah, 2 years. Welcome to year 3. Welcome home for many of you. Thank you so much for coming back. Some of you came, you were here Christmas Eve, and some of you are watching online for the very first time. Thank you so much for being with us. I think many of us have this anticipation in the new year, and I think looking back, I would say, like, man, I wish I would have done some things differently from last year to, and this year I want to do things differently. And one of those things were, for in my life, is like I've run my entire life a lot, most of my adult life, and last year I didn't run a ton. And then one of my friends had this idea of like, hey, let's sign up for the Shamrock Half Marathon at the end of March. Let's do it. And I was like, we've got like not very many weeks to prepare, but we're doing it. We're going for it. And super excited about that. In maybe you have in the past, you've set some goals, and you didn't know what that looked like. And a few years back, my mentor asked me to come up with some goals. He asked me in November. We met at the end of November. I brought my goal list to him and was like trying to impress him, trying to be prepared to have an answer for every question that he might have. And I brought this list, and I was prepared, y'all. I was big time prepared. And I took the list, and he was like, as he was like reading through it, he was just like totally quiet. Super awkward. It was like this. It was so painful. It was so painful. And he looked at me and he was like, I've got an idea. You've got like 100 goals plus on this list. What if you just had one? And I was like, well, which one? And he's like, well, it's simple. 2 words, follow Jesus. What would your year be like if you just said yes to following Jesus? And I was like, I don't know, but I guess we're going to do that. I put all this time and effort and energy into all this. Like, I'm just going to follow Jesus. I don't even know what that looks like. We are kicking off this series. It's called Who Told You That? And it is basically kicking in the face a bunch of lies that we've probably been told at one point in time in our life, and throwing the list away and just like looking at one another and saying, like, honestly, what does it look like to just follow Jesus? Like, what would that look like? You see, we buy lies. And then when we find out that they're lies, we dig and look everywhere for the receipt, and we try to find, like, how on earth can we take it back? Is it a return policy? Is it past the time for me to be able to take it back? And some of those lies that we buy are like in myself, some of those lies are simple to return. Some lies are harder to return, heavier to return. Like, for example, I had to learn the hard way that you can't feed mogwai after midnight. I thought that you could. I know now that, like, I remember the second that it dawned on me that it is actually possible to go swimming before the 30-minute timer goes off and not get cramps. And some of you are like, thanks, Josh, you've ruined it for the rest of us forever and ever and ever. Like I just remember swimming and thinking, I have no cramps. This is amazing. I know, I had to learn the hard way, that it is not always 5 o'clock somewhere. Mathematically impossible, not possible. It is not. It's not at all. I know the reality is, I know that just based off of the patterns of my life and my past behavior, is I know that the stuff that I want, that I think now will make me happy and more satisfied, is going to eventually just lead to more emptiness. And so, how many times do we repeat that cycle over and over and over? Like, some lies that we buy are really easy to return to exchange for something better, but there's some other lies. There's some other lies that we buy that take root in our heart, and they disguise themselves. They almost have like a voice changer on the lies that they tell us in our lives, and we can't recognize them. We don't know if it's coming from like us following Jesus, if it is coming from the Holy Spirit, or if it is, if it's like our conscience. Or some of us have worn out our conscience so badly with the decisions that we made in our lives, we're like, we don't even know who to listen to or where to go or what to do and what to do next. And I think I have some of those all the time, but there's one lie that I think as we prepared this message, this was the one that I was like, this is the one, let me at it, I want it, I'm gonna bust it up, I'm gonna take the bat to the piñata, and we're gonna see things go smash everywhere. And it is a little bit like this. So I pride myself on being the world's fastest grocery shopper. Like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate grocery shopping, and here's why. So much time and energy goes into something that is really just so so simple, right? Somebody had the idea, let's just shop online. It's, it solve tons of problems. And so I was like, yeah, genius. We've never done that. But so I have this deal, like I'm gonna go into the store, I'm gonna get stuff as fast as I can, as efficient as I can, and get in and get out. And so one day, leading up to Christmas time, one of our friends was like, hey, know you guys are trying to do more keto diet type stuff. Well, have you guys ever made angel eggs? And I was like, I love eggs. Never heard of angel eggs. Could you introduce us? And so it's really simple. Google it, you'll find it. But it's the recipe is simply you substitute mayonnaise for butter. Okay, it's insane. It's insanely awesome. And the idea really, really excited me. Okay, especially with Kerrygold butter. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go get some eggs. I went in to this grocery store. I got the world's largest container of eggs, and I was making my way to the front. And I've never had a spill. I've never dropped anything in my adult life until this moment. I'm carrying this humongous carton of eggs, and as I'm getting ready to put it up on the conveyor belt, an invisible tripwire tripped the eggs. The lid flew off, and all 4,000 of these eggs go everywhere. And I'm taking this hard. Okay, I mean, this is in my performance review for grocery shopping in 2018. This is the one red mark on myself. And I'm taking it serious because it's right at the finish line. And the cashier looks up at me, and she's got flair everywhere, which means she's been around for a while, and she's earned the awards and the prizes for the items per minute scanned and stuff. And she looks at me and she says, it's okay. It is what it is. We're going to put that up here on the screen. It is what it is. And I was like, oh, that's like for me, in my head and my heart, when somebody says that, that's like the feeling you get when you hear a record scratch or somebody's nails on a chalkboard. That is like nails across my soul when somebody says, it is what it is. And I was like, oh my gosh. And before I knew it, a high school kid who was bagging just sprinted and took off. And before the mess was even really cleaned up, they had a whole new kit of eggs there for me. The angel eggs were going to happen. And I was like, I just apologized over and over and over, and the only hope she could give me was, it's okay, it is what it is. It is what it is. And I was like, but no, there's just so much tension and unrest. And so I literally, as silly as it may sound, I was I thought about that all day. I created a mess that inconvenienced an entire department and put everybody on code red alert. I completely broke the eggs. And I think that many of us in your life, I'm thinking through this, many of us in our life, there was a moment in your story where in your life, you dropped the eggs. It was your fault. And it's just been on repeat, like a horrible song. And the snails are scratching on your soul, and somebody leaned into your brokenness and they just said, it is what it is. Well, with Jesus, we have a new hope. One of the prophets in the Old Testament, this has been kind of on repeat in my head and heart and soul for many, many years. I just want to read this over you in your story as we kick off this new year. From the Message translation, it reads this: forget about what's happened. Don't keep going over old history. Be alert. Be present. I'm about to do something brand new. It's bursting out. Don't you see it? Like somebody along the way has disguised a lie in your heart and your soul, and they've said something to the tune of it is what it is, and you've interpreted that, you've recoded that in your internal decision making, and that really sounds a little bit more like, my chance to start over is over because it is what it is. I'm too old to start brand new. I'm too deep in my career to begin taking classes online or to go to night school to pursue my passion that I've been passionate about. My life it's really too late to start again and to start over. And God's leaning into all of our brokenness, and he says, whoa, 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 wait just a minute. It's not too late. You're never too old. You're never too far away. I'm about to do something brand new, and guess what? It involves you. Like, I'm getting ready to do something brand new, and nothing can stop it. It is not too late to start over. Your chance to start over is not over, not even close. It's never too late. It's never too late. I remember like leaning into my mentor and saying, okay, like this year, I don't know what this year is going to look like. I'm just going to follow Jesus. I'm going to follow Jesus. I'm going to follow Jesus. And like kind of like drummed up in me, I kind of thought like, man, I want to go back to school. I want to go to seminary. I want to work on my MDiv, but I don't want to rush it like a laser blistering pace or speed. And so like I was just kind of like, I want to follow Jesus. And so following Jesus looked like me leaning into that and saying like, okay, well, I'm going to start. I'm going to follow. And so I was a few semesters in before my time to go on my first week-long intensive that was going to be from a Monday to a Friday. We were already here in New England, and it was the fall of September 2017, making plans to be in Lincoln, Illinois on the first week of January in 2018, where, unbeknownst to me, it was only going to be 2 degrees there and 30 degrees here. Brought the wrong clothes, first of all. And all of a sudden, I'd go through class, like in class from 8 in the morning to about 6 in the afternoon, and I it was super intense. Nobody told me how intense and intensive was going to be. And by the final day, I was like, I've had enough of cafeteria food. I made it through this week. I have survived. I need beef. And so I just like started looking at people who looked like they were in charge. I was like, where can I find the best beef in town? I've been like eating, like I know highly processed meat all week, and I am ready for like the cow. I'm ready for the whole thing. And they looked at me and they're like, well, there is this place, and it's in the center of town. It is in the town square, and it's called Gazzardo's. And I was like, awesome, sounds great. And so I got that, and I went back, and I looked it up, and I had like several people mention how awesome it was, and I go back, and I think about it, I drag my feet a little bit, and by the time I'd realized that I didn't have a car, everybody who had a car had already gone home. My flight didn't leave until the next morning, and so I literally MapQuested, Googled, like how long would it take me to walk to Gazzardo's, and it was like 2 degrees outside, and didn't bring a coat. Awesome. And so I was like, so I looked at it. It's like 2.5 miles, and I didn't bring my running shoes at all. And so I just kind of took off and strolled out, and as I get there, 2.5 miles, like I am there. I turn the corner. It's 2 degrees outside. It is a Friday night, and the line at Gazzardo's is out the door. It is BYOB. People are standing outside holding their bottles of wine, and I'm like, I don't even know, like. I'm just gonna walk past them and see if there's like a place for party, table party one. And as I like walk past each person, I find the lady who's taking names, and she's like, I was like, how long is the wait? And she was like, oh, it's probably gonna be like, an hour and a half. And I was like, I walked that far here, It's like, I'm not gonna go anywhere. And so she was like, well, how many are in your party? And I said, 1. And she's like, oh, well, come with me. Like, I'm like, everybody's giving me the death stare. You've been in that moment, right, where you're waiting for eternity, and then you see somebody walk in and like, they weren't even here. They got a table. And it's I'm bumping shoulder to shoulder. There's a couple on their way out. They look ticked off, and I thought, this is going to be awesome. My night is starting perfect. And I go and I sit down, and there's like this little table sandwiched between a whole bunch of other people. And I'm sitting by myself, and I look over, and they're like, you ever been here? No, I've never been here. And it's like, well, let me take you to the meat bar. It's not a salad bar, y'all. It's a meat bar. I mean, it's like heaven. I know you're hungry, so hold tight, all right? I won't be here long. And so, I go up, I get some stuff, I come back to the table, and as I'm sitting down, pull out my phone alarm goes off, and it is 6:03. Guys, I am 1,500 miles away from the 6:03. And I was like, and some of you don't know the significance of that, and as a community, we set our alarms at 6:03 to pray this really simple prayer. And it goes like this: God, just move me closer to somebody who needs to move closer to you. And I just closed my eyes. I was praying. It looked like I was praying for my dinner. Not weird in the Midwest. A lot of people do that. And so as I'm praying silently, not in a creepily way, I feel this giant, strong hand touch my shoulder. And I was like, I just stopped praying and I opened my eyes and was like, God? I was like, this is it, we're going. Like, I have no idea. And so like I look up and it was the guy next to me. And he was like, hey, sorry to interrupt you. I'm like, we're really busy here, you see. It's me and nobody. And he's like, can I borrow your salt? And I was like, well, yeah. The second I said yeah, he just like, he was so close to me. He just reached over and grabbed it, which is like some of you who have personal space issues would have been like, that's it, I'm out of here. And so like I just kind of sat there and I thought, okay, I just prayed this prayer. I'm 1,500 miles away. I think I might want to eat this steak alone. I think I might want to eat it in silence. I think I kind of want to shut all this off and just enjoy. I've had a hard week. Like, I'm just going to go for it. And all of a sudden, like, I overhear what this couple is talking about. And so because they'd kind of already interrupted my meat bar experience, I like leaned over and was like, hey, are you guys from here? I'm flying out tomorrow. And, what's kind of your story? And, like, it was really clear to me that when I met Javier and Vanessa, that they weren't from around there. And I didn't look like I was from around there either. Like, I stand out in the Midwest just as much as I stand out here. Like, you should be at a beach, like, selling inflatable beach toys or something. And so I was sitting there, and he was like, well, actually, we grew up in LA, and we moved here a couple of years ago, and every Friday night, we pick a different thing to do together as a couple. We get a babysitter, and we go out on a date night. And was like, oh, that's really awesome. Couples need to do that all the time. And we just kind of like start talking. It was like, so what on earth made you move from Los Angeles to literally rural America? Like nothing. And it's like, well, Vanessa began talking and she said, well, we couldn't literally go like a mile from our house and it would take us like an hour per mile to get anywhere. Like 15-lane highways, smog that looked like fog. Our kids' schools were in shambles and all kind and we were just kind of like, once we Googled and saw like the prices of homes and land in the Midwest for what we paid in Los Angeles, we were like, hey, let's just start over. Don't you guys get any ideas? And so they Googled and they looked and they were like, they saw this tiny little town and they were like, oh man, this looks good. And they investigated the schools and they were like, hey, we could like buy hundreds of acres of land and raise our kids like on a farm and they'd be able to ride their bikes and we wouldn't have to worry about them outside. And so we did. And so they moved to town and got jobs really fast and started this little tiny like hobby farm. And like Javier looked at me and was like, I felt like for the majority of our lives, like we always wondered if it was ever really possible to start over. And we did. And I was like, well, how's it going? Like, how's the date? How's your night going? It was like, well, it's not really a date anymore. And I was like, why? What's going on? And then Vanessa took over and she said, well, whenever we were seated next to this couple and they were seated right where you were at. And right when we were right when we came in, like it wasn't just a few minutes later that the waiter came by and dropped off their food. And the second that he put their food on their table, the husband looked at the waiter and said, we'd like to take our food to go. And I was like, well, maybe something happened. It was like, oh, no. They began saying extremely inappropriate things about how we don't belong to be in their town and we should just go back to, where our skin color says that we're from. And I was just getting more furious. The more that they shared with me, the more furious I was actually getting. And so as Vanessa continues to go on, she says like, so my husband just decided to lean over and speak up, and it caused them to get really, really angry. And so they just get their food to go, and they just like walked out and they grabbed their bottle, and now you're here. And I was like, man, and Vanessa was like, well, the man was wearing a hat. He was an older man and had a hat, and on the hat, all the hat said was Jesus. And I was like, I came here to eat meat, man, Came here just to celebrate a bit. And as I'm sitting there, I think to myself, I think that is right where God meets us most of the time. God meets us in this place where we are super frustrated. Our lives are upside down. We feel like all we could ever see is just the broken egg part of our story. We think that there's no way possible we could ever really truly start over, but God is leaning across our lives and he is saying, listen, like quit thinking about all of the broken things. I'm getting ready to do something new, and I'm going to do something new through you. That moment actually changed me. As sitting there listening to this story, Vanessa said, some heated words were exchanged, and as soon as the couple got up and left, my husband looks at me and he says, I'm going to hell. And Vanessa looked at him and said, well, you're not going there alone. I'm going with you. And I'm sitting there, and it was like nails on the chalkboard of my soul, and I'm like, what on earth do I do or say now? And so I just kind of looked at him and I said, Vanessa, who told you that? Who told you that you're going to hell? And she was like, well, that couple did. That couple with the Jesus hat, they said that. And I was like, well, man, I'm so sorry. And her husband piped up and he said, well, you see, in my mind, I think that all of us, God is at the top of this mountain, and we're all just taking our own paths up to the mountain, but in the end, we're all going to reach him anyway. And I was like, here it is. This is it. Thank you, Jesus. And I leaned in and I was like, guys, but what would you do if I told you that God came down? What would you do if I told you that he left the mountain and came into your mess, into your story, into your brokenness? What would you do? Just like a sustained, long period of silence. We end up having some cordial conversation afterwards, exchange numbers, and I think to myself, it's like, what does the future really look like for me, for you, for everybody who is connected to us relationally in this community? What does it look like? I don't know. I don't really know what it looks like, but it could be as simple as 2 words: follow Jesus. It could be as simple as rushing into other people's hurt and saying, I know where hope is, and I know where to find it, and his name is Jesus. In the past, the story went a little bit like this. It was an it is what it is kind of a story. Within the Jewish culture, for somebody to decide they're going to follow God and they weren't a part of the Jewish family, they would literally walk into a ceremonial ritual where they would walk into a baptistry themselves, immerse themselves, and then they were just good. Well, all of a sudden, John shows up on the scene, and things begin to change. So, we see a move get switched from it is what it is to John shows up, and he starts preaching this message, and he says something really simple. He says, repent. Another way of saying, return to where you're supposed to be. The kingdom of heaven is closer than you could ever possibly think. And everybody began responding, standing at the edge of the Jordan River one day. And he begins baptizing person after person after person. And one day he looks up and it is Jesus. And John had told everybody that he was going to come. He had said, there's going to be one who is going to come greater than me. I'm baptizing you for forgiveness of sins, but there's going to be one who comes after me who baptizes you with his Spirit, and you will receive his Spirit. And I am not even worthy enough to untie his sandals. And everyone's like, okay, dude. He's wearing wearing like a Goodwill costume, was wearing like a camel hair thing with a leather belt and eating wild locusts and honey. You know it was a new year because he was eating funny. And so all of a sudden, he is standing there and looks up, and Jesus is, boom, he is right there. And Jesus walks up to John, and he says, John, I want you to baptize me. And John's like, oh, no, you baptize me. And Jesus always wins the argument. And so John ended up baptizing Jesus. And not too long after that, we see from the Gospel of Mark, some crazy stuff happens in John's life and in John's story. And John actually gets put into prison, and it's crazy. So if you'll meet us there in the Gospel of Mark chapter 1, we're going to put some of these scriptures up here on the screen. Mark chapter 1, beginning in verse 14. After John was put into prison, Jesus went into Galilee proclaiming the good news of God. Ha! Can you imagine? What would you do if somebody that you loved got put into prison? You would think that okay, let's just all get together. We're gonna run to the store and get some white signs and Sharpie markers, and we're gonna go picket outside the prison. We want justice. But that's not what Jesus did. Instead of picketing, after John was put into prison, Jesus went into Galilee and he began to proclaim, tell everybody, it's not it is what it is, there's something better coming. It's not it is what it is. And here's what he said, verse 15. The time has come, he said, the kingdom of God has come near. Repent and believe the good news. Just repent and believe. Return to where you're supposed to be and just believe it. Like return, you know there is unrest in your soul. Just return to where you were supposed to be. Verse 16, as Jesus walked alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon, which is Peter, and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake because they were fishermen. Verse 17, Jesus said, come and follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Pause. Here's what's beautiful. Jesus walked in to Peter and Andrew's story, and he saw something in them that they didn't quite yet see in themselves. Like even Mark said, like there's going to be this, like there's this huge, like they were fishermen. They were identified by their trade, by what they did for a living. And Jesus walks up and he says, whoa. You follow me and I'm going to make you into something that you could never be without me. So all of a sudden he walks up and he says, okay, New Year's resolution, goals for this year, drop your nets. Just drop your nets, follow me. Verse 18, at once they left their nets and followed him. Verse 19, whenever he had gone a little bit further, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John in a boat, and they were preparing their nets. It's funny how, like, have you ever been preparing for one thing and it turned out to be a completely different thing? I'm preparing for Meat Bar, and God's like, I've got this couple, I want you to kind of like lean into their broken eggs, and I just want you to just be present. I want you to listen. I want you to give all your energy to understanding. While James and John were preparing their nets, while they were getting ready to live in the reality that it is what it is, while they were in that narrative, Jesus walks in and he busts in and he says, come on, come and follow me. Verse 20, without delay. If you have a pen, you need to underline those two words in your scriptures. Without delay. He called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed them. I think many of us in the childhood version of faith that was passed down to us as kids, we look at these stories and Jesus walking into the lives of these guys and we say, oh yeah, I mean, they just it must have been easy. It must have been painless. No, could you imagine? What we have here in terms of literary clues just in literature is there were two types of fishermen in the first world. There were the hired hands, and then there were the guys who owned the boats. So what happens is most families would partner together and so that they could make a bigger impact, so that they could have a higher return, a higher yield. And so all of a sudden, James and John, Mark gives us a clue here, they were fishing with their dad with hired men, plural. So it's easy to walk away from a lack of success to follow Jesus. But this family was successful. This family knew what it was like to have too much work that we can't pull all the fish into the boat without ourselves. We need to hire people outside of our family to help us haul all of this in. And so at once, immediately, without delay, dropped their nets. I think many of us are asking God right now, we're saying, God, what is next? 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 And Jesus rushes in and he says, follow me, believe me, and drop your nets. It's impossible for us, to come to Jesus and say, with tight-fisted, with our hands completely full of our nets, and say, what's next? Jesus says, drop your nets. What I'm about to do in you is something that is completely brand new. My question to you is, are you willing to allow him to do something brand new in you? You see, these guys would end up living a story and living a courageous journey. I'd say never underestimate a small group of people with chips on their shoulders, because we are still telling their stories over and over and over. And I imagine that, if you continue to read the Gospels, you'll see that there was a time of confusion and a lack of understanding, and like some of them go back and they grab their nets again. And so for many of us, those of us who've dropped our nets one time, we drop our nets daily. Like Jesus is not a supplement of our lives. He's the center of all of it. He's not a supplement. He's not like an elective that I turn to when the nets aren't full. Like he brings life to those moments, the place where we say, I don't have life anymore. He looked at the boys and he said, guys, we're not gonna fish for fish anymore. We are going to fish for people. You don't need to grab the nets. Where we're going, we don't need any nets. And he leans in, he says, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna look for people with nets in their hands, and we're just gonna move closer. But follow me. Jesus walks into your story and my story saying something really simple. Follow me. But oftentimes, I've got to be honest. Oftentimes, what I do is I begin making plans. I say, like, this is where I'm going. And I look at Jesus and I say, Jesus, I want you to follow me. I want you just to follow me in what I'm planning. And Jesus is like, no. Drop your nets, dude. Drop your nets. Drop your nets. Drop your nets, like, at once. Drop your nets. At once, drop your nets. Like, while we're trying to figure out what's next, Jesus is just saying, drop your nets. Like, we're like, God, what is next? Like, what is next for my family, for my business, for my school? Like, I need clarity. I'm doing all this work, and I'm studying and spending thousands of dollars going to school. Like, what on earth is next? And Jesus says, just follow me. Drop your nets. Follow me. What's next? Drop your nets. Jesus walked into all these guys' stories, and he didn't say, hey, guys, how's your day? Well, we're getting ready, I'm out here, we're fishing, not having any luck. My friends are back at the dock. They're preparing their nets. They haven't left harbor yet. And Jesus leaned back into them, and he said, it is what it is. That's not what he said. He said, you guys want to live a better story? Do you want meaning? Do you want to find meaning? Because it's outside of the life and the rhythm that you're living right now. So what do you got to do? Just believe and drop your nets and follow me. And at once, they abandon their nets. For some of us, that's abandoning our comfort. Everything that's familiar to you, everything that seems natural to you, everything that somebody told you along the way, well, it is what it is. For some of you, it means like leaving your career and courageously rushing into a future that Jesus is trying to usher you into right now. For some of you, that means you're going back to school and working hard and chasing Jesus into the unknown because he says, follow me. For some of you, it means you are going to look at your current work situation right now and you're going to reorient your entire life and effort and put Jesus at the center of everything. These men's plans and dreams instantly were swallowed up by Jesus' plans and dreams for these men. I guess one of my greatest fears in life is to end up at the end of it never having followed Jesus and just going to Jesus and saying, follow me. What these men did when they dropped their nets is they abandoned themselves. Because Jesus was not just a supplement, he became the center of everything for every single one of them. And I'm here to tell you today, God wants to do something brand new through you. As we close today, I'm going to tell you a story about my friend Cheryl. You know, it's kind of crazy because over the last like several 2+ years, our team's been praying like wildfire that God would move us closer to people who needed to move closer to him. That maybe God might move us into some stories with a whole lot of brokenness and broken eggs and people who had not a lot of hope and where things could actually go. People who would say, it is what it is, and we come into their story and we say, because of Jesus, it is not yet what it could be. It's not it is what it is. It's not yet what it could be. Like, so for us as a people, adopting a vocabulary of it's not what it is anymore for us. Because of Jesus, it is not what it yet could be. It is not what it yet could be. And so when we moved to New England, I mean, this is crazy. In 2016, our kids were used to playing outside and having room to ride their bikes and not get in any kind of trouble. And one day, the boys went outside and were riding their bikes, and all of a sudden I see these people like running outside saying, they can't ride their bikes here. And I was like, you cannot be ugly to my sweet little Jeremiah. Like, he looks like a Precious Moments like toy. I mean, he's like the most precious little thing. And they're like, you can't come in here. Do you see the sign? And I was like, okay. I thought we paid taxes on these roads and sidewalks. I don't know. I guess we don't. But so we called that neighborhood across the street from where we lived off of Front Street. From that point forward, we didn't know the name. We gave it a new name. We called it the No-No neighborhood. Don't look in that direction. Don't even breathe in that direction. That is the No-No neighborhood. I bought the lie. It is what it is. In the fall of 2017, a group of 12 college students from the Midwest decided to spend their fall break here with us at Movement. Like, what do you want us to do? And we were like, well, we've got all these door hangers. We want you just to go all throughout all the neighborhoods close to us. And we just want you to, like, don't be aggressive. Just put the door hanger on it. We want people to know that you can start over. Like, your, like, starting over thing is not over. Actually, with Jesus, you can start brand new. God has some plans and it involves you. And so we were like, very specifically, do not go into the No-No neighborhood. Well, one guy, as they were walking down the road, was praying. And he's got this stack of door hangers. And he comes to the No-No neighborhood, and he looked at everybody, and he was like, guys, I'm going for it. He grabbed this stack of door hangers and ran through like all 90 houses as fast as he could, sprinting and putting door hangers on the doors. And he came out and he thought he was completely scot-free. And we had no idea what was getting ready to happen next. A few days roll around, and I get this call from a sergeant, police station. Like, Josh, we told you guys you can't go in that neighborhood. You know, we might have to give you a citation or something. And I was like, I gave him the secret password and the handshake thing. And I was like, I know some people, and just give us another chance. He's like, okay, you're new to town. You don't know any better. I'm like, yeah, see, it is what it is. And he's like, so we had this conversation, and I'm telling everybody this on Sunday morning. I'm telling everybody, we had this team of people, and they went into the No-No neighborhood, and we couldn't stop this one guy. He sprinted through the neighborhood. He was like, it is what it is. It is not yet what it could be. I'm telling the story. All of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, this lady in the very back, in the far back left side, she holds the door hanger up while I am telling the story. Right after the service, she comes down front and she meets me, and she said, you don't know me, but I got a door hanger this week, and I had left that morning and gone to the grocery store, and on the way home from the grocery store, I was praying to God, and I was praying, God, please help me start over. Please help me start a brand new life. I need your help. 2 months before this, a husband of close to 30 years passed away with the battle of cancer, and she didn't know what to do. She pulls in off of Front Street into her neighborhood, makes a left, pulls up into her driveway, and looks and sees on the front doorknob, it is not yet what it could be. And every single Sunday from fall of 2017, sweet Cheryl would sit right here in this section, all by herself, moving closer to Jesus, finding out that there's life in Christ, finding out that she can start over again. A few months goes by, and there was a man who joined her. Ended up being a man that she met and began dating, who loved Jesus. And you think, like, in your mid to late 60s, you think, like, it's too late for me. It's too late for me to start over. It's too late for me to find life again. And they came up to me several months later, and they said, we're ready to be married. We don't want Jesus to be a supplement to our marriage. We want him to be at the center of it all. And so for 8 weeks, we prayed together, we studied together, and a couple weeks before the end of that, Miss Cheryl said, I have this idea. I'd like to be baptized at my dress rehearsal. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, I'm in, I'm ready. I want my whole family's flying in from all over the country. I want everybody to see it. I want it to be a total surprise. And she stopped and she paused. And I said, Cheryl, what's wrong? She said, I'd really love for my son to join me. Like, I've been telling him about Jesus, and I've been telling him about, like, his love, and I've been telling him about everything I've learned here, and I want him to make this decision too. And I was like, well, let's just pray. Let's just pray that he says yes. The next week, Cheryl came into the office with these giant crocodile tears, and her mascara was running everywhere, and she said, my son said yes. And so Friday night, while most of you were commuting home from work or wrapping up things at work, there are about 30 people here, and we're preparing for a wedding. People who'd never been to Movement had no idea that it's not normal for the Horse Trough Baptistry to sit right over here, just kind of there, you know? And all of a sudden, the wedding party turned into a house party in heaven. And Cheryl's to-be husband and I baptized Cheryl, and Cheryl turned right around and baptized her 30-plus-year-old son. And it became like the wedding from this weekend became a footnote. Why? Because Jesus walked into our stories and he said, you just follow me. Just drop your nets. I don't know what your nets look like, but I'm sure you do. Do you believe him? I can't force you to drop your nets, but I'd love to create an opportunity for you to do that. The band is going to sing a song, and we'd love for you to sing with us. And afterwards, if you're ready to make your next move with Jesus, whatever that might be, we'll have leaders down front that would love to pray with you and talk with you what that might look like. For some of you, you might have friends or neighbors or family members or people you've been praying for at 603. You might need to invite them to come tomorrow night to our 7 o'clock service to hear this story, to hear that hope is closer than you could ever possibly think. Like, what would it actually look like if we fully dropped the lie and left our nets and truly believed it is not yet what it could be? Would you stand to your feet as we sing?